Rebellion, Book 2 of the Ritual Saga. Written and performed by author Caitlin Costello. Print copyright Caitlin Costello 2019. Audio copyright Caitlin Costello 2021. Chapter 2. Shauna. I glance up from the elven text I'm reading when Lyra scrapes a chair across the floor. She's been trying to get him to meet with her for a few days now, so I won't interrupt this meeting for anything. I peek over the edge of my book to see them sitting in the corner by the window. Lyra has a bit of parchment in her hand with questions the four of us had agreed upon. Questions about my health, Philippe's and mine former home of Cabanarral Lake, and many questions about the Dark Ones, their magic, and if Amicus can tell us why it is different from our own. My thoughts are conflicted on many things lately, but one thing I keep thinking is that if Damien is dead, truly dead, then maybe we can all start to be a little safer. Damien had been Queen Moraine's head of the High Guard, but he was also an officer of the Dark Ones. He led the attack on my home of Cabanarral Lake and was the reason I had to flee after being named the Aka Ritual. He took Philippe from me, twisted his mind, and used him as a weapon. One of the things Moraine had warned me would happen if I didn't go into hiding. What she didn't know was that I wouldn't even get a chance to decide if her guidance was right. Philippe looks up from his chess game like he can sense my thoughts. Instead of returning his gaze, I focus on the looping elven text. Paulo thinks I can trust Philippe again, but I'm still not sure. But I had a lot of faith in him once. But once a buttonhole loses its shape, it's hard to fit a peg back in. Do you feel it's safe to leave now? Lyra asks Amicus. I think so. The elves I sent out say the camp has dispersed. He lowers his voice a bit more. I lean in their direction ever so slightly so I can hear his next words. My scouts say the Dark Ones have gone back to Cabanarral Lake. Concern flashes over Lyra's face. Why? What would draw them back there? I don't know. Something must have happened in the city, but I don't want to send the elves too close. I'm sorry, but that's all the information I can give you. Just know you can leave now. I would go soon while your exit east is still open. Lyra nods and pushes herself away from the table. And you agree we should go towards Bulandon and Hollands? Even if the Dark Ones are there. He steeples his hands. I do. In the time before the wars, the only elves who had spirit magic were royals. That still seems to hold true. However, Moraine has no heir, and it's clear she's not the Ritual. It's possible the Ritual is a descendant of her sister, or the goddess could have chosen another entirely. I believe that if the goddess has chosen to bless someone with spirit magic, they would be from Bulandon, the city that studied it. Thank you, Amicus. Lyra bows, then walks over to my table. How much of that did you hear? She gets right to the point. I don't know what you mean, I say, closing my book. You've been on the same 2 pages for 10 minutes now. You were listening in. She crosses her arms. Lyra's face falls into a knowing, mother-like smile. Well? Fine. Yes, I was curious. We haven't heard anything from home. I take a sip of the juice I left neglected on the table. I know. I miss my home and my family too, and we know nothing about Philippe's father. We don't even know if he's alive or if he knows what happened to his son. I don't remember seeing him at the ceremony in the castle. For now, that's going to have to stay in the realm of the unknown. Maybe it's something we can work on finding out, but for now, we need to leave. We can't afford to become pinned down here again. Checkmate, Paulo exclaims, placing a piece down and removing another. Philippe leans close and examines the board. Fine, you win. He pushes his chair back and comes to the table where Lyra and I sit. What are you two talking about? He asks, pulling up a chair and flipping it around so he straddles it, leaning forward on the back of the chair. Have you talked to Amicus? Paulo asks, following him over. Did you not see me just talking with him over there? Lyra replies. Her laugh is like tinkling icicles. No, my back was to you. So what did Amicus say? He said that we can leave. He and his scouts don't know why yet, but the Dark Ones have dispersed. They could be back though, so we should leave before that happens. The boys both look concerned. So now that we're safe to leave, we need to decide what we should do next. Paulo takes the last chair. Well, one thing is fairly obvious, I think, Philippe says, gesturing to his face. I need to get to Fugaste Peak and take a test, and do my ceremony. I don't know if that would be wise to do right now, Paulo counters. The Dark Ones know you didn't make it there, so they'll be waiting for you. But he does need to get marked as a ritual, Lyra says. Amicus agrees. We need to head to Bulandon and Hollands too. Right now, you are a bit safer, I say to Philippe. We can't hide, but you can. You do need to go soon, but maybe putting it off a bit longer would be a good idea. Lyra jumps up. Oh, hang on. She runs out of the room and returns with a jar. I was given this before my city fell. It's a special cream that covers your markings. I pick up the jar and open it up to examine the white, creamy contents. Makeup? Sort of. There's a special herb in it so it can adapt to everyone's skin and hide your marks. Do something small, just so your markings appear. I cast out a touch of magic to the dirt beneath the building and wiggle a few droplets of water from the earth. May I? She asks, when the familiar blue glow appears across my skin. I nod, and she scoops out a tiny amount of the white cream and brushes it across my cheek. Her fingers are cool against my skin as she gently rubs in the product. There. It'll take a few minutes to take effect, but you get the idea. She hands me a mirror. I'm still shocked by the blue designs that slide over my skin after I cast, but I can already see where they are fading away under Lyra's magic cream. Whoa, I whisper. Lyra grins from ear to ear. I have a second jar, so I'll stay on the lookout for more, especially since we need to cover up all 4 of us. I think there's no reason to delay getting Philippe tested with this in our possession. We can easily hide the markings, and the cream lasts a few hours. Everyone nods, content for a moment with this temporary solution. Which brings us to the next thing. We need to find the 5th of our circle. We need to find the spirit ritual before the Dark Ones do, she says. Have we even heard anything about whether or not he or she has revealed themselves? Paulo asks. No. At least not that Amicus has heard, Lyra says. But this is something we need to do. Maybe we can spread the news that we're looking, but in a subtle way so we don't get ourselves caught. I agree, I say. We need to get to them before something like what happened to Philippe and me happens to them. We don't want the Dark Ones to have control over them. Philippe was dangerous. The spirit ritual would be even worse. So what should we do? We can't go to Fugaste Peak and Bulandon at the same time. They're in opposite directions, Paulo points out. One is in the mountains and the other on the edge of the desert. Well, which is closer? Philippe asks. Maybe we could do one, then the other, or split and meet up. Fugaste Peak is closer. I feel like it's going to take much longer to try to find any sign of the spirit ritual, let alone get to Bulandon. Paulo pauses. Splitting up might be our best bet because of that. He glances around. I'm not super keen on that, but I'm not opposed to it either. Thoughts? I can't help the feeling of dread forming in the pit of my stomach. I don't know how I feel about splitting up. I glance at them, each in turn. They're all I have now that my family has been captured. I would be so scared for each of you. There could be other benefits of separating. Whenever we traveled alone, the Dark Ones have found it harder to track us. We're safer alone, but we need the power we have together, Lyra says. So what should we do? Paulo asks. I take another sip of my juice. I don't want to be the one to choose. I know where I want to go. I want to head home and find my family. But that isn't an option for any of us. I think Paulo might be right. Separating is the best plan. 2 of us can head to Bulandon, and 2 of us can go to Fugaste Peak. Then, we all meet up in Hollands, Lyra suggests. What do you think? She asks, turning to us. I just want to do whatever will be safest. If that means splitting up, I agree. Let's do it, Philippe says. I understand you might not trust me yet, but maybe if you go with me, you can see that I'm okay now. I won't let anything happen to you. I'll do my best. Lyra nods. Thank you, Philippe. I agree that would be a good way to grow trust. I feel like I should head the duo going towards Boulandin, because we have to pass through my home kingdom. Paulo glances at me. It doesn't matter where I go. Shauna, do you have a preference? I shake my head. It doesn't matter to me. I glance at Philippe. I can tell he wants me to go with him, to grow that trust back between the two of us. But he won't object to Paulo either. Maybe I should go with Philippe, I say, and he perks up a bit. I don't know how elven culture looks at men and women traveling, but more attention would come to two women traveling without a man. But if we went with a man and a woman, especially since we'll be able to hide our markings, we could be better off. That's very true. What I have found is that when I do have the cream over my skin, it doesn't look as elven, if that makes sense. That is good. People won't pay attention to you, I say. So, we are in agreement then? Lyra and Paulo are going to Boulandin, Philippe and I are going to Fogaste Peak. I scan the group, and each one of them nods in turn. So, then what happens? As you said, it won't take as long to get to Fogaste Peak as Boulandin. Once we're finished with Philippe's ceremony, should we try to come meet you in Hollands? How will we communicate with you? Paulo and I used our mental taps before being captured, but it was a fairly short distance. I don't know. That's something we have to either ask Amicus before we leave, or test somehow. In all honesty, we might want to avoid using it altogether. If the Dark Ones figure out how to tap the connections, it leaves us vulnerable. We may just have to go by word of mouth when we get to the city, Lyra says. A silence falls over our group as we realize we've planned everything out as we can as a group. Now we have to divide up and decide what we want to do from there. I look over at Philippe. This will be the longest we've been alone together since the ceremony. He gives me a little smile. Have you decided how you wish to go forth? Amicus asks, striding into the room. We have. There's a bit more planning to do, but we know where each of us needs to go from here, Lyra says. Good. Feel free to take whatever supplies you need for your journey, horses included. You'll be safer if you travel faster. I glance over at Philippe, who's trying to look eager at the idea of riding another elven horse, but I can tell he's also thinking of all of the issues he has with riding. Thank you, Amicus. A horse would be wonderful, I say, hiding my grin behind my cup. Chapter 3. Shauna. Food, check. Books, check. A few spare clothes, check. Double check for extra socks, I say, going over the end of the supplies on the list Philippe and I had made. Things are scattered around the kitchen in mounds. I turn to Philippe, who is lazily peeling an apple with the edge of his knife. Anything I missed? I begin putting the items into the 2 packs that Amicus gave us for our journey. He takes a bite of his apple. Do you have a whetstone? We might need to sharpen blades. And what about oil for your bow? Check and check, I say, picking up the items and placing them in his bag. Oh, Paulo gave me some of this puff from a cattail, and flint and steel. I show him the cotton-like substance before shoving it in a pocket with the flint and steel. He said it was a good fire starter. Could come in handy. Philippe rolls his eyes at me and makes one of his fingers catch on fire with a small pop. He grins, and rotating his apple above the flame, begins roasting it. Or have your companion be able to control fire. I guess that's helpful too, I concede. But I leave the fire starter supplies in the pack. You never know, though. He huffs and puts the fire out. I still don't get why we have to take horses. I feel much more comfortable walking. I sigh and pull up a chair. You know exactly why we need to ride. It would take us months to get there. I search his eyes, but they are stubborn as always. I asked Amicus for his sweetest horses. I even went down with him earlier to meet the ones he picked out for us. If you would only come down and meet the horses, I'm sure... I knew Rose since I was a child. That didn't stop her from throwing me, he says, sounding like a child still. Philippe, that was an accident. We both know that. How were you to know that Rose had thrown her shoe? I ask, taking his hand. He pulls his hand away slowly, leaving me with the feeling of air and the passage of his calloused hand over mine. I try to keep my face blank. I don't want him to see how my heart jumped, feeling his skin on mine. I should have known. I was the one who put those shoes on her. But I was too busy getting all doe-eyed at you. And what did I get for it? A bruised butt and a lashing from my father's tongue. He grumbles. I'm sorry. I know you're only trying to plan a way for us to get there quickly. He looks down at his hands as the flames dance across his knuckles. Besides, I did get to watch you chase after a horse that day. You're cute when you get frustrated. He lets the flames die out in his hands and tries to take back mine, but I smack him away, a grin forming on my lips. Come on, you'll feel better once you meet them. He takes another bite of his apple. These apples might make them like me a bit more than my personality ever will. I sigh at this, but don't respond, as we both head to the stables. The horses that Amicus selected are sweet. One is a mare, the other a gelding. I like the gelding. Maple, a bit more. He's a chestnut with a star on his face that almost looks like the leaf he was named after. He likes to nuzzle against my dress, searching for hidden sweets. We'll have to watch him with the food bags. We won't have any apples by the time we leave if he finds them. The other horse Amicus picked for us is named Poppy. She is a sweet little dark bay with enough of a forelock for both horses. She prances when she sees us approaching and gives a little whinny. See, she just wants to get to know you. Philippe jumps a bit when Poppy nickers at him, but he continues forward with his hand out, palm up. Her name is Poppy, I whisper from behind him. Go on. I nudge him forward. Good girl, Poppy. Hello, he says, letting Poppy nuzzle his hand. Her ears prick forward and she begins nipping at his hands with her lips. Philippe pulls back and Poppy stretches her neck out to reach over the fence and get to him. She smells the apple you ate, that's all, I say, laughing a bit when he jumps. She wants some for herself. Philippe looks down at the apple in his other hand, then holds it out to Poppy. The horse eagerly licks up the apple and chomps away on the sweet core. When she's finished, she comes back to sniff around his chest and pockets for more snacks. I'm sorry, Philippe says, scratching her cheek. I don't have anything else for you today. The horse brings her head up and turns to look at him. I'm sorry, he says again, laughing at her pleading brown eyes. Amicus said they both have a bit of a sweet tooth. We'll have to watch that. We won't have any apples for us. As I lean up against the wooden beam, the other horse comes up beside me. This is Maple. Philippe stretches his hand out to pet him. Want to groom them? Then you can get to know Poppy before we leave. Philippe is about to answer when Poppy headbutts him, rubbing her head on his chest. I think someone wants me to do just that, he says with an uneasy laugh. Come on, I'll show you where the grooming stuff is. Hi everybody, I wanted to pop in here really quick before we get to the end of this podcast and let you know that I have a sale that is going on currently. And it is a sneaky discount that only a few people know about right now. So good on you for listening to the podcast and hearing about this sneaky discount. And that is 25% off all of my signed print books at CaitlinCostello.com. And that is with the code MOVING, because I am moving at the end of July and I need to reduce some of the stock of books that I have on hand. Unfortunately, I have quite a few books ready for people that were expected to go out last year to book events that sadly were canceled due to the health and safety of everyone around us. But now I need to move them out of my house. So if you would like to get 25% off of an order, please head over to CaitlinCostello.com and use code MOVING. That is code MOVING for 25% off. Thanks again for listening to the podcast. Okay, goodbye. Hello everyone, it is Caitlin Costello, the author and narrator of Rebellion. I hope you have enjoyed this week's episode. Please don't forget to leave a rating or review on the podcast hoster of your choice. And if you have finished the rituals or Rebellion, please leave a rating or review where you buy books online. If you can't possibly wait until next week for the next episode, I do have signed copies of all of my books available at CaitlinCostello.com, or you can pick them up just about online at any retailer. You could also, if you are not financially able to purchase a book at this time, check out your local library and see if you can place a request to get that book in. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. It means more than you know, and I will see you next week. Bye!